Hello everyone and welcome to our third partner training webinar. Today we'll be going through our latest product release, A/B testing and optimization. For those of you who don't know us already, I'm Ellie Doherty, the UK Partner Manager here at Nosto. Taking us through the product today, we have our Head of Customer Success, Rory Gilmore, and we also have Gemma O'Leary, who's our Senior Customer Success Manager, and she'll be talking about some live examples of customers who she's already been helping to run tests. There'll be 10 minutes at the end for questions, so please let us know in the chat if there's anything you'd like us to go through after. So Nosto delivers true one-to-one personalisation, and at the core of it all is our e-commerce intelligence engine that uses advanced machine learning algorithms, which, unlike some other personalisation technologies, have exclusively been trained on e-commerce data for over 7 years. Our personalisation solution can help merchants improve metrics like conversion rate, click-through rate, and minimise bounce rate. But what has sometimes been tricky is proving exactly how much these metrics have been affected. What's really exciting is that now, not only will we be able to test how product recs are working, which works better than another, which content campaign is more successful, and pretty much anything else that Nosto runs on site, but as well as showing whether or not a test has been successful and continuously optimizing these tests to minimize risk, our merchandising insights actually help merchants to see why a test has been successful too. So over to Rory and Gemma to explain why in more detail.
Thanks, Ellie. Yeah, essentially with Nosto, there are two main test types that we support. We are able to run campaign testing, and we're also able to run experience testing. So campaign testing is split tests essentially. So that can be A/B tests, but it's obviously not limited to A/B. It can go A/B-N essentially. So you can basically test one position on the website, so one area of the website. You can test content or recommendation A versus recommendation or content B, C, D, E, etc. So that's what we're calling campaign testing. And then in the other side of things is the experience testing. And experience testing for us basically is where you can test multiple elements, so multiple areas of your website on multiple pages, and they can all be factored into that same test. Basically what we do is we basically have like two kind of main methodologies when we're talking about experience testing. The first of which is like a regular split. So you can see here you've got like, what is the impact if a customer is only shown variation A, where they have the one banner? What's the impact if they are shown variation B, where they have these three areas? And then you've got variation C, where you have two areas that have got personalized content going to them. But the kind of different areas are never overlapping in that example. Whereas with multivariate tests, what you have is you are essentially able to see every possible variation, and those will be rendered at any one time to any user, or not to any user, sorry, but to your kind of segmented out users. So in this example here, you've got two possible combinations for the homepage banner, and then there's another banner below it which has three possible combinations, and you can see that you can have A or B across the top with C, D, or E along the bottom. We'll get into this a little bit later on, but that's essentially the kind of two methodologies that we have with experience tests, and then obviously we have our campaign testing as well. So one thing that Ellie mentioned, which I think is really key, is our continuous optimization. And essentially this is where we add the like AI and machine learning element of Nosto into our testing tool. What typically happens when retailers and like the retailers you're working with are running tests is they will set up a test, and in this example here you've got version A, version B, version C, and they'll let them run for a period of time, maybe 4 weeks, and there'll be a bit of a trend, and in this example it's C, and they'll split and they'll decide, right, okay, we're going to stick with C because that's hitting the metric that we're trying to optimize for. This is good, however, like this manual intervention obviously can like create quite a lot of risk. And it also means that, if variation A and B are working, are not working as hard as variation C for those 4 weeks, you're actually going to potentially lose revenue or lose out on the metric that you're trying to optimize for. Similarly, with a bit more time, it might be the case that C was really successful in the first 4 weeks, but actually over a longer period when you're working with a larger pool of data, C doesn't work quite so well. So that's where we are using the Nosto engine to essentially weight the traffic based on the metric that you're trying to optimize for. So as you can see here, what Nosto does and what we are aiming to do, and this is, again, this is the sort of machine learning element of it, is we're aiming to actually divide the traffic and send more traffic or a higher proportion of traffic to the variation that is working based on the metric that you wish to optimize for. And this is kind of nicely highlighted by this graph, whereby, you know, over time, the variations are going to win out at different points. So B might be winning in week 4, C was winning in week 2. And what we're trying to do is, by running a longer test, we're trying to essentially mitigate the level of risk by sending less traffic to the losing variation, but we're also trying to get a more holistic view of which one overall is working best for you. So with the version that we're optimizing for, there are a bunch of things that we can optimize for through the platform, and this continuous optimization can be used to kind of hit whichever goal it might be. So you can see here you've got AOV, you've got conversion rate, impressions, average visit value. We'll go into this as well when I show you the dashboard, but this is kind of what we're able to do. The other thing that we offer that Ellie touched on is our merchandising insights. So much like our main segmentation and insights tool, which we covered in, I think, the first webinar, if you go back and check that out, we're able to expose for each variation what the winning products, the winning categories, and the winning kind of brands were for that test. So that's a key sort of differentiator for us, because you're able to actually go in and let's say you're a conversion rate optimization agency, you can give them a ton of extra data that's kind of product focused and category focused once they've run the test, that maybe is not kind of easily exposed in other tools in the market. So I think this is really key, and it's definitely something that we're going to see a lot of value from, I think, going forward. So with that in mind, I'll quickly run through sort of setting up a test, how it looks. Historically, these testing platforms that, well, certainly I've used in my previous roles, have been quite clunky. They've been very much built for a statistician, I would say. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to increase our kind of usability. Obviously, usability is a massive factor at Nosto. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make this as easy as possible for you guys as partners or for merchants to actually set up and self-serve with these tests. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a new test here. And this is all kind of held within our new tab. You may have actually seen this if you've been into the UI recently, but we've got this new little test tube here, which is for setting up tests. And this kind of takes you into the A/B testing and optimization window. If I were to set up a test, I'm first kind of presented with the type of test I want to run. So I can choose here between the campaign or the experience test. Obviously, with a campaign test, you can only do split testing, whereas with the experience testing that we talked about, you can do a split or you can do multivariate testing. So in the campaign test, I'm just going to set this up for the sake of argument today. Let's say I want to test 2 recommendations against each other on the homepage for conversion. I'm going to call this homepage bestsellers versus personalized test. So we give it a name. We have to give it a description. Well, we actually don't have to, it's optional, but I think it's really important to sort of set out your hypotheses before you do this. Want to test the impact of personalized versus bestsellers on conversion percentage. So next up, we choose our optimization goal, and this is really important because while, you know, initially when you set up a test, your goal might be for conversion, you might actually find that midway through the test, you actually want to expose, you find that, all right, while, you know, variation A is converting better, variation B might have a much higher average order value, and you might find later on that actually the one that the thing that we're interested in is increasing our average order value. So we're able to expose a lot of these metrics later on, but in the first instance, what we want to do is just choose conversion rate. There are some other options that we can we can expose, but in this example, we just want to choose conversion rate. The next thing we want to do is we want to choose the segment that we're going to target. So Gemma will cover this in a little bit more detail later on, but essentially you're able to test for all customers all the way through to your, like, I don't know, your brand affinity fans, your prospects, first-time customers. You know, you can basically leverage the segmentation tool to test for a specific segment. If you want to see what the impact of showing a discount code is to first-time customers, for example, you can do that. I'm just going to choose all customers for the time being, and then my next port of call is to select a placement. So let's just say we're going to use front page Nosto 1 in this example, and that's a recommendation placement. Excuse me. And then what I want to do is I basically want to choose my variation A, which is going to be bestsellers. So when you open your variations, you're essentially able to grab either recommendations or on-site content. So what I want to do in this example is I want to choose recommendations, but obviously when you open content campaigns, you can just choose and send a content campaign to that placement. I'm going to choose recommendations, and then I'm going to choose bestsellers. And then for my variation B, I can just go back in and I can choose handpick for you. The next thing that I can do is if I wanted to, you know, because a split test is, you know, everyone calls it an A/B test, but actually a split test is wider than that. Like you can have A/B/N. So I can go in and I can add a bunch more variations. I can go in and remove them. Essentially, it allows me to be a bit more flexible and test more stuff. This next area is where you choose to turn on or turn off continuous optimization. And this is obviously dependent on the plan that your kind of given merchant is on, because this is the sort of AI element of Nosto. If they don't have access to this tool, they'll just be able to choose a split, and it's essentially, you know, in this example, it would just be a 50-50 split. Whereas if you choose continuous optimization as turned on, what's going to happen is the traffic split becomes dynamic, and then over time, we're going to send more traffic to the winning variation based on the optimization goal that we're kind of going after. So that's essentially it. You get an overview of your test that you're going to run, and then you can either save it as a draft and you can set this to run later on, maybe if you've got an event going on or something like that, or you can just set it running straight away. I'm not actually going to save and activate this. I'll just save it as a draft for now. And then we wanted to kind of show you some of the results in the actual back end and show you that how that sort of looks. But it's a little bit sensitive, as I'm sure you can understand. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pass over to Gemma now, who can talk a little bit more about the client results that we've seen and give you a bit of an insight of how this can actually work for a retailer in the real world. So over to you, Gemma.
Hi everybody, I'm Gemma, and I'm going to show you a couple of real-life client examples of how our clients have been using the A/B testing platform so far. I'm going to show, basically at the moment, as Rory mentioned, you can either test recommendations or on-site content through the tool. So I'm going to show one example of a recommendation campaign test and another example of a content multiple campaign test. So the first one that we have here is from Mercedes-AMG Motorsport, and this was testing two bundles against each other, two different types of dynamic bundle, to see which was the highest converting. So the merchant already knew something about how his customers shopped or suspected. So this test was both to confirm his hypothesis and then to use the results to dig a little bit deeper into the specifics. So Formula One fans tend to buy multiple items of teamwear together and build a kit from their favorite team or their favorite driver. So the merchant saw that A/B testing, along with dynamic bundles, which allows you to purchase multiple products together in a bundle, was a great opportunity to make this process easier and to naturally boost average order value. But he wanted to test what kind of bundle would convert better: a bundle of caps and other types of teamwear like t-shirts and jackets, or a bundle of all caps, because if any of you are Formula One fans, you'll know that the caps are the most important thing. So the merchant ran, so the goal was to see which one would convert the best. And the merchant ran the same test across 3 stores, UK, Europe and US. And what we found was that in the UK and the US, the all caps bundle converted much better, and it netted 10% more average order value for the merchant as well. But on the EU store, the results were much closer, and currently the hat and teamwear bundle is winning. So just incidentally, A/B testing can also be a great way for merchants with more than one store view to understand if there are regional differences in shopping behaviour. And it's not always the same. And then this merchant was particularly interested in using the merchandising insights that Rory mentioned after the test was finished to see which products in the bundle proved most popular and which were the most often bought together. And then he can use those results to inform future bundles to make sure that he's giving people the optimal sort of experience when they want to buy products together. And the next test that I ran with a client was ONeill, so that's a popular Irish sportswear brand. And while Mercedes used our dynamic bundles tool, ONeill used on-site content personalization in conjunction with A/B testing to run these 3 separate campaign tests within the same placement. So it's the prime real estate of the kind of homepage hero banner that they decided to utilize for the testing. They had been using our segments and insights tool for many months. So they actually already had 3 segments that they wanted to target with the test, and they already had quite a lot of data. And those segments were men's category affinity, women's category affinity, and kids category affinity. So if you tuned in for our segmentation webinar, you'll know that those are customer groups who've shown affinities towards a certain category. So browsing products within those categories, perhaps purchasing them as well. So yeah, people who have been looking at these a lot so that they knew that the content was going to be very personalized towards them. So basically, they showed half of a personalized banner based on the segments were split 50-50, and half of them were shown a personalized banner based on their affinities, and half of them were shown the generic rugby content that you can see on the right. And the goal was to test the click-through rate of the personalized versus the generic content, which is click-through rate is kind of a better metric to optimize for when you're talking about kind of editorial content on the homepage, because it's not something that many people convert from. So arguably, like, engagement is sort of a better metric to look at in that instance. And each of the segments was initially split 50-50, but after 2 weeks of learning, Nosto begins to use the continuous optimization that Rory talked about to allocate more traffic to the higher performing variation. And so this prevented ONeill's from losing out on any revenue throughout the test. Also, so to get to the results, for the women and kids categories, the personalized content resulted in higher click-through rate and conversion. So it was very helpful for the merchant to evaluate the ROI of having a personalized experience on the homepage, and how relatively low effort content campaigns can not only provide an improved customer experience, but also generate more revenue. So that was a really, really interesting one, and it kind of proved the value of Nosto as well, that personalization is key.
Great, thank you, Gemma. I think we have had some questions sent in. Are they in the deck?
Yeah.
Bear with us a second. We're just going to grab some of the questions that came through.
I think the first one was, are we able to test Nosto versus non-Nosto on site?
Yeah, I mean, technically we can do. Yeah, we're able to set that running, and it's not like an accessible feature for customers as such, but we can certainly work with a partner and a retailer if they want to set that up. That is feasible. Yeah.
Cool. Also, are we able to run tests with Nosto on any site element?
Yeah. So I think the question being, like, you know, can Nosto sort of be tested on anything? Yeah, within the DOM, if in the HTML document there is something that Nosto can manipulate using our placements or our content tool, then yeah, we're going to be able to test it. So there's not a lot that we can't really offer. The only kind of main limitation that we have at the moment with the testing tool is that we don't do split URL testing. So, you know, 50% of the traffic see version A of the site and 50% of the traffic see version B, for example. But anything that can be dynamically manipulated with the Nosto content and placement delivery, we can test, yeah.
We had another one on integrations. Are we currently integrated into BigCommerce?
Into BigCommerce, yeah, we have an integration with BigCommerce, and the testing capabilities are available for BigCommerce as well. Yeah. Cool.
Oh, there's I think the only other one was on pricing. Like, where can we find sort of pricing, and how does that?
Okay, yeah. Obviously, reach out to us if you want to discuss pricing in a bit more detail. Would be my advice. We support campaign testing and yeah, the kind of standard split testing without any of the AI elements, like the continuous optimization or the merchandising insights on our growth and our plus plans. And then the merchandising insights and the continuous optimization is available from the premium plan upwards. But obviously, just come and speak to us if you have a case or you have a customer that you're working with and you want to learn more about it and speak about the pricing. There was one more, which is about a limit of is there a limitation to the number of variations that I can run in a test? There isn't really, because as you can see in the UI, you're able to just add as many variations as you wish. But obviously there's probably a human limitation on how many variations you want to run, because after a while, you're going to have to be creating a ton of content if you're doing it for content. Or if you're using loads and loads of different recommendations, the test might not be meaningful or get to kind of statistical significance. So that's just something to bear in mind if you're setting these things up. Cool. I think
just a couple of resources basically we can send these. We'll send this out like after the webinar as well. But just a couple of resources we thought would be useful in relation to Abto. We've got a ton of stuff that's been made available with the release, so like case studies, blogs, help center articles, Nosto playbook, which is a really good resource like for recommendations and stuff as well. Just some good customer examples like the ones that we went over today.
Great.
And then yeah, I guess just any questions, you can contact any of us, but probably just use the details there as a first port of call. And tiny bit of housekeeping, I guess, is our next partner training webinar will be on November 14th, and we'll be going over dynamic bundles, which we touched on like briefly today, some of the tests that we ran, but just be going over that in a bit more detail.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of the week, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.